Carrying a fixed blade knife, specifically a tactical knife, I think is something that you should consider doing, especially if you're already carrying a fixed blade. You might as well have best of both worlds. And we have a drop coming soon by Montana Knife Company. Matter of fact, we're just a few hours away from a drop. Talk about some of my favorite tactical knives, why you might want to consider carrying a tactical knife for your everyday carry, some things that benefit from both. So tactical knives are built for tough jobs, and they can also be used for everyday carry. You can use them for cutting rope, preparing food. You know, they can be made of all sorts of blade steels: AEBL, 1095C, Nitro V, Magna Cut, even Crucible, like some CPMD2 is really good sometimes for that. And one thing is that there are a lot of companies that have carved out a name for themselves for making tough, durable, reliable tactical knives that could also be used for everyday carry. A few of my favorites are Montana Knife Company, Tour Knives, Gerber, also even specifically TKL. I think that we got to kind of talk about one of my go-tos for camping is some of the larger Gerber knives. Now, I like the Gerber knives, especially the ones that are made in America, made in USA. If you can get you something with some partial serrations, this was just a very durable tool. The one thing I like about this specific sheath is that the knife can go in any way. There's not a lot of sheaths on the market where it does not matter how you redeploy the knife. That's very convenient, especially if you're using the knife for a specific task. You're cutting through burlap, you're messing around with a hog trap, you're doing some type of hunting task, you're messing with some kindling, you're doing whatever, and you just want to pick up the sheath, stick it back in there. It makes life that much easier. And I like the fact this one is made in the USA. Very big, maybe just not something that you EDC every day. So something that's a little bit more EDC specific. We'll talk about those here in a second. Blade quality is important for me. If I'm gonna carry a knife that's also a tactical knife, I like something that you might find a M4 blade steel, maybe a Magna Cut, even, you know, find yourself, I'm even okay with the Nitro V as well, just because the features of those I think are very, very numerous. I think you can get a good bang for your buck. And so some of my favorites when it comes to having durability are going to be from Montana Knife Company and from Tour Knives. The first one here is the Serpent by Tour Knives. This one is rocking a Crucible M4 blade steel. It's made in America. It has a very good blade shape. It also has the hole in the back so that you can reverse grip this if you need to for whatever reason, or even reverse grip this for any type of reasons for cutting purposes to maintain stability as you cut. And the reason that they put these holes in the bottom of a knife, if you have to use this for defensive purposes and you put your finger in that hole, as you slice towards the enemy, it's less likely that the blade slides down. Because if you've ever been in knife training, I've never been in a knife fight, but I've been in a lot of knife training, especially with knives that are electric, like electric knives. I don't know if you ever traded with those before. Knives slip down your hands. They sprayed water on us that was mixed with oil to simulate blood. Knives slip down your hand while you're using them. So if you have this hole in the back, that kind of helps prevent the knife from sliding down and you cutting yourself. That's why a lot of benefit of that. And also you can use different techniques for holding a knife. But this is also an everyday carry knife. You can use this for very easy tasks for opening boxes, Amazon box warriors, cutting zip ties, all of that good stuff. Blade shape can be important for utility cuts, but depending on the blade material, it can mean less sharpening, more cutting. And when it's time to sharpen, if you get something that has a decent choil, if you have a decent blade shape, you know, I'm not a big fan of the recurve. For me, having to sharpen some stuff myself, that can makes life easier for you as well. Montana Knife Company dropping some more of their tactical line. I have 3 out of 4. I'm missing one, so I got my eye on the tactical line as well. But you can get anything from the War Goat, the Battle Goat. Both of those are some freaking bangers that came from them. Me particularly, I'm more of a fan of the Battle Goat because it doesn't have that ring. It does still have this lip in the back that tries to prevent the knife from slipping up while you're using it if you had to use it for a defensive purpose. That is why this has this shape. It still tries to prevent the knife from slipping, but it's not going to be as good as a ring. But this is a lot, you know, this is fantastic for when it's time to actually everyday carry this knife, because it does have just a little bit smaller of a footprint. Although the knife itself is a little bit bigger, Then the one with the hole, that hole in the back, you can kind of recognize that whenever this thing is in the pocket. And then even the task force, the bigger knife that they have in their lineup, this thing is a great, I keep this on my plate carrier, which is right over here. This is a great full function knife. If you want to have something just a little bit bigger for the protective purposes, this is probably about as big as it would get if I was going to everyday carry this, and it would be on the belt itself. The thing about getting something from Montana Knife Company is they have definitely expanded what you get when you make a purchase from them. They're giving you 3x3 clips from Aussie Clips. I think they even give you 2x2 clips if you get a smaller one. You get the traditional carriers that let you loop those through your belt, your traditional belts. You can change that up as you make your final order. And the thing about them is the ergonomics for Montana Knife Company knives are my fave. That's probably why I kind of go towards those the most. Although I like the tour, it's a little bit fatter. Okay. The grip is very secure. I think it has optimal control, especially when slippery or wet, giggity. And I'm a big fan of it. If you've been waiting for a drop, I would just kind of go with Montana Knife Company for that one and done when it comes to a tactical knife and an EDC knife. Now, we talked about the rope cutting, package opening, a defensive weapon as well. But you know what I use these knives a lot for? Food preparation, okay? Quickly being able to pull one of these bad boys out in the kitchen and just be able to do quick food prep. Slicing tomatoes, slicing some onions, prepping strawberries for my boys, cutting specifically the excess fat off of chicken. And so a clean, sharp blade is always useful for food prep. And one thing is, a lot of times I grab my kitchen knives and they need sharpening. And I fail to sharpen them because they're not always at the front of my mind. They're not always there at the ready. These things are always ready to rock and roll. They're all rocking Magna Cut blade steel, which, as mentioned before, means less sharpening, more cutting. Big thing I like about that. Ultimately, a tactical knife can also be used for first aid. Not rendering first aid, but preparing to render for first aid. Cutting bandages, cutting clothing where seconds can count. Sometimes, although it's very nice to have a folder, right? Whenever you're nervous, you may not fully open a folder completely. Maybe it's not durable enough. Being able to cut through somebody that's wearing a thick hoodie, they're wearing thick clothing. Maybe somebody's wearing a motorcycle jacket or whatever. Although it's not optimal to put a blade that close to their skin, if you're really trying to get in there and prepare to render some first aid, having a fixed blade, especially a tactical blade, can come in handy. And then you can just use it for general utility. Let's say you're a woodworking, you can use it for scoring wood before you make a type of cut. Maybe you want to make some marks on some wood or whatever the case may be. If you're doing that type of stuff in the garage, you can use it for cutting stuff that's laid flat on a surface. If you could do a good type of utility cut, that's why the blade shape here is optimal for being able to just get down into a surface and make that type of utility cut as well. You can use it for making kindling if you want to make it into a hunting knife. Once you've already gone through the task of gathering the wood and you're trying to start a fire, you can use especially a very sharp blade shape to make the kindling. And it can be the last steps before you start a fire overall. And because of the blades, because of the higher resistance, because of all the Cerakoting that you get on any of these blades, it gives a higher level of resistance for being out in the weather. If you're taking these out there with you in the elements, higher likelihood that you're going to reduce the chance of getting rust. Now, I do have here the Three Rivers Manufacturing. This is their Neutron 2. And this thing here has a Magna Cut blade steel, but I do like a blade steel that is Cerakoted, has some type of coating on it. It just gives it that much more protection and just less likelihood that I even have to worry about getting any type of rust whatsoever. Buying a tactical knife, especially a fixed blade knife, I think is an investment. If you get one that's built to last, built for years, you should be able to hand these down to your kids. Any of these knives, they're going to cost you, a very good knife, especially made in America, it can be 180 to 400 bucks, depending on exactly what you get. But imagine you make a one-time purchase of any of these knives, you take care of, you send it back into the manufacturer, let them do the sharpening, or you get yourself a fixed angle sharpening system and you sharpen it yourself. Any of these can be handed down to my sons. One of my sons are 3, the other one is 4. There is no reason that 20 years from now, the 24-year-old version or 23-year-old version of my sons couldn't get either one of these knives. And I think that the dollar investment makes sense for that. So I think that for more challenging tasks, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, if you live in the type of area where you want to have an extra level of protection, a tactical knife makes a lot of sense. Know your local knife laws. I don't stay in your municipality. I live in Texas. I can carry any of these blades if I want to. You may not be able to do the same thing if you live in Massachusetts or if you live in New York or if you live in some other state that's similar to that. Know your laws. Don't listen to some guy on the internet that tells you, well, he said get a tactical knife and I followed suit. It's not my fault, Mr. Officer. So if you're looking for a durable knife that's going to be very, very ready to suit and ready for you to use, check out the drop that's happening in just a few hours. I'm just hugging myself, hoping I can get the last in their lineup when it comes to their tactical line, because I think it's well suited. This is for my plate carrier. This is what I use for everyday carry. This is what I use when I have no clue what I'm getting into. I normally will keep it on the shoulder strap of my rucking bag and just for self-defense purposes. I want that last knife to put in my gun cabinet just in case some SHTF and I need to be able to rock and roll. Let me know, what is your favorite fixed blade or tactical knife that you have? Is it by K-Bar? You have something by Kaiser? Maybe you got something that's not necessarily tactical, but you use it in that manner. Maybe it's from Bradford, or it's from TKL, or it's from whoever. Let me know what you're using for a knife for fixed blade or tactical purposes, or if you would even consider doing this yourself. If this is your first time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my grape. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.